What is the nature of the gods? Are they expressions of naturalistic phenomena? Thor representing thunder and Loki representing lightning? Or are they archetypes locked within our collective subconscious, waiting to reveal themselves through our psychological self-exploration? Perhaps yet they are real, unseen entities who govern our world from beyond this dimension. Higher beings who guide and shape humanity, and who war against similar forces in an eternal cosmic struggle. And this by no means is a modern debate. It goes back to the very beginning of written thought amongst the Romans, the Greeks, Persians, and Northmen alike. In Varg's book, Reflections on European Mythology and Polytheism, he explores this naturalistic interpretation of paganism. He writes, as a European polytheist, I know that Loki is the anthropomorphized lightning of the sky. His name derives from the Proto-Indo-European root lok, which means simply lightning. When we know that Loki is the lightning and Thor, the god of thunder, we also understand why he always chases Loki. If you ever see lightning in the sky, you can be sure to shortly after hear the thunder. So, the thunder chases the lightning. Varg emphasizes a localized and ancestral approach to heathenry. He sees the gods as intimately tied to specific regions and people, representing cultural, blood, and geographical heritage, rather than universalism. He says, the gods are expressions of our blood and soil, a reflection of who we are and where we come from. Another believer in this naturalistic interpretation is Joseph Campbell. I believe the gods often represent natural forces and human responses to them. This is particularly relevant in pagan traditions for him, which frequently connect gods to elements of the natural world. He says, the powers of nature are beyond humanity's control, and so we personify them as gods to bring them into relation with our own lives. Others view the gods as archetypes, characters locked within the subconscious of humanity. The gods are archetypal images, personification of the psychic forces that shape our lives. They represent the great dynamic forces of the psyche. For example, Jung saw Odin as a symbol of certain cultural and psychological traits embedded within the Germanic collective unconscious. He states, Wotan is a fundamental attribute of the collective unconscious and can re-emerge wherever circumstances allow. The believers in the archetypal model of the gods claim that by embodying and mimicking certain characteristics, these gods can awaken these inner energies to achieve personal goals and amplify their own power and will. Nietzsche himself had a similar vein of interpretation as he explored the death of traditional gods and the emergence of new values. His work often interpreted gods as a symbolic representation of human ideals and existential challenges. He emphasized the symbolic and cultural roles of the gods, seeing them as reflections of human creativity and will to power. He writes, the gods are the highest metaphors of humanity, embodiments of our deepest struggles and triumphs. And so now we look into the final of the three categories I listed, the true believers, those who believe in the divinity, the personal, or even the impersonal aspect of the gods. Some of them being polytheistic in their interpretation, that the gods have egos, have personalities, have functions. Others see the gods in a more deistic, impersonal manner, that the true reality of the universe is a force field, and these gods embody aspects of this field, this impersonal divinity. Cicero argued for gods as personal beings who actively influence and care about human lives. The gods are not only supreme in their nature, but also attentive to human affairs, rewarding virtue and punishing vice. Proclus also believed that they were personal. The gods are ever present, their wisdom guiding the cosmos, and their care shaping the lives of mortals. And again, this debate goes back to Rome, back to Greece. Xenophanes wrote, mortals consider that the gods are born, and that they wear clothes, and have voices and bodies like their own. If cattle or lions had hands, they would draw the forms of gods as resembling themselves. So not everybody was on the same page. And just like today, not everyone's on the same page. The debate carries on forward. And I do not believe this debate will ever end or cease. Now, where do I stand? I myself am what can be described as, or I have heard described as, a spiritual thrall. Yes, or a low IQ believer. I do believe in personal beings, unseen forces that inhabit other planes and influences one. And this is for many reasons, but it has to do with my own personal experiences that have shaped me. Undeniable encounters and results of certain shamanic and ritualistic and meditative and intellectual pursuits in my own path. I do believe in beings. And I also believe that our ancestors also believed in beings as well. Many claim that they knew or they thought it was always just stories and archetypes, and that they were just atheists who believed in symbology. I believe that they were extremely superstitious people. And the superstition does not just stem from Christianity. I think humans, by default, are superstitious. And I remember I was at the Danish National Museum, and there was a dark age piece of jewelry, a necklace, and on the necklace was an inscription, and on this inscription it said, "I invoke the All Highest." And back then, the All Highest meant the All Father, it meant Odin. And to me, it's a very surreal moment. I suggest everyone goes to these old museums at least once in their life. They'll have a lot of surreal moments, but invocation is a very specific term. You know, it means to bring forth a specific being. It wasn't asking for the representation of the All Highest. It was asking to invoke the All Highest. For me, that was always something that stuck with me. And you can kind of see these pre-Christian superstitions still kind of enveloping our cultures. Things like the evil eye, right? The evil eye is a very superstitious concept that you can be cursed by eye contact with people who have control over malevolent powers. Even the concept of sacrifice. Why are you sacrificing to archetypes? Why were they sacrificing to naturalistic elements? To appease the storm, to appease the floods, to appease these naturalistic phenomena. Perhaps I could see that being the case. But to me, a sacrifice entails appeasement of something, someone who would accept the sacrifice consciously, right? And so, another criticism I've heard is that, well, exoteric belief was for the peasants and thralls, right? They were the ones who believed in actual beings. And the priests and the chieftains and the kings, they believed in the esoteric. And the esoteric boiled it all down to archetypes and naturalistic phenomena. Which, to me, after investigating and sifting through a lot of esoteric societies and belief systems and groups, the more esoteric you get, the more metaphysical it is. The more closed off the secret society is, the more metaphysical its inner core is. Right? It always goes more and more deep within the belief in higher power. Again, in a lot of these modern societies, even to get in, you have to claim to believe in something higher. So even they profess to believe in something higher. Not the same things and the same beings we believe in. They have their own little club, but even they have belief and are required by oath to have these beliefs. Now, I do believe in entities, but that's not to say I'm going to disparage or not take value in other interpretations. I think Varg's book, Reflections on European Mythology and Polytheism, and Sorcery and Religion in Scandinavia, I really like those books. I enjoy reading those books. I think he has a lot of interesting things to say through the lens that he sees reality with. I especially like his take against fighting the Ettins to stave off the chaos of the world that is ever encroaching. I like his writings on the May Queen Festival and the representations of the May King and Queen and so forth, and how that whole dynamic works. I find value. I find value in Nietzsche, even though he is obviously not a believer. Because I can just easily switch to different lenses of how to view reality. No problem. I think it's a valuable ability that some people don't have and maybe should at least try to view things from other perspectives, to try and be able to shut off preconceived notions and beliefs and kind of switch modalities. Because we typically just view reality with the modality that resonates with our own preconceived notions of how reality functions, and I believe that's very limiting. So I take value in the symbolic interpretations. And I don't believe people are low IQ or naive or silly. I guess that's another aspect of having true belief, is that it's really taboo in today's society to actually believe in something higher, rather than just believe that everything is vibrating dead matter. And so I think actually there are more true believers out there than we really typically know of, but they fear judgment, they fear social ostracization, and they fear being viewed as unhinged if they profess these beliefs. Which is sad, because there's a couple billion people on this world who have their own very fanciful and metaphysical and interesting beliefs. But because these are normalized throughout the world's cultures, nobody really thinks twice about it. It's okay to believe in Jesus Christ walking on water. It's not okay to believe in Thor smashing ice giants, culturally. And I understand that's the case, and I don't begrudge it. I accept it. I don't really go around in my everyday life preaching Thor on the corner. In fact, I wouldn't even box myself into a specific categorization or group like heathenry or what have you. In fact, there's a lot of problems with it, which I will discuss in another video coming up. But another criticism is that, well, we're just LARPing. And we have no right to actually believe these things because these are just written interpretations of beliefs that we actually don't really know what these people thought. Which I find interesting because in the modern world, we have so much accumulated knowledge of what Hyperboreans believed that it is much thicker than the Bible at this point. And yet, it was okay for the vast majority of history for illiterate people to believe in the Bible, even though they never read it. And they were just told what to believe by priests. So, I don't think it's a valid criticism. Sure, it's a revival cult. There's many revival cults going on right now. And there has been many revival cults in the past. So, just because something is a revival cult or a heresy, there's many heresies in the past. It's a phenomenon that exists within human dynamics. Heresies, cults, revivals. The cult of Mithras, example, right? It was almost kind of a revival, like an adoption, a rebirth of that older Persian model into the Roman legions. These things happen all the time. And it's going to continue to happen. It's not just going to be a static thing. Especially within, like, you know, this type of stuff. There's going to be future variations, and it's going to keep splintering off, and new variations will emerge, just like Protestantism has split into thousands of different variations. And this is just kind of what happens. I don't really believe in canonizing anything either. I don't think that's really necessary. At the end of the day, people have to really walk their own path. I'm just sharing my perspective with you. And maybe you align with it. Maybe you take some problems with it, some contention with it, and that's fine. I don't need to convert. I don't need to win souls. But I do think it is important for me to profess that I do believe in some sort of higher dimension to reality. Because what I notice is that a lot of people just kind of use ancestral revival beliefs like heathenry or Celtic paganism or Slavic. It almost becomes a type of academic exercise where basically you're just becoming like a lexicon for these beliefs, and whoever is the biggest lexicon is essentially like the Pope of these types of beliefs. And whoever has the most disciplined mind to read through all these sagas and texts and stories and law books becomes the de facto true believer, the most pious, I guess would be the word in this case, believer of that particular path. Which, again, that's what happens when you're taking this academic archetypal approach where you just kind of want to show off how much you know and not really get into the actual wisdom, the actual how to live, how to act, how to be in the world dimension of what spirituality and religion actually point to, and the actual point of these things, what the reason for it is. It's to know how to live. But yeah, I see it evolving into academic tweed heathenry, which I don't really align with at the end of the day. But, if that's what these people are into, I mean, if it becomes their hobby, fine, so be it. But that's not what I'm doing. It's not what I've been interested in for like the last 15 years. And again, I will not box myself in. I notice when I have professed certain beliefs, the orthodox police, the orthodoxy, not Christian orthodoxy, but you have to believe in a certain orthodoxy of a certain path. They want to police me. Okay? For example, it's acceptable to talk about how we have North Pole origins, the polar origins of Hyperboreans. That's an acceptable topic. But a non acceptable topic is timeline shifts, which I've experienced. And so I get policed as to what and what I can't talk about. Which is interesting to say the least, that's where you have the line is polar belief, but not time is fluid, which is actually a standard operating procedure and belief within pagan theology. Past, present, and future are entwined and are intimately connected. So, again, I get policed. I just find it interesting where the lines are drawn. Sometimes I like just to push the boundaries just to see where people's lines are being drawn. And I find it very fascinating, to say the least. And so I want to know what you guys believe, if it's naturalistic, symbolic, archetypal, if it's impersonal, if it's personal.